Good evening, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you for coming back and nice to have you here. So I have several news to share with you uh, and some videos at the end of the reading material. Thank you again. The war in the northern front between TDF and all the forces from Amara, Oromo, Somalia, and others still tense. There's heavy fighting, bloody, but not that much movement in capturing towns or cities in both sides. The Ethiopian forces, helped by Eritrea and by all militia, came from all over Ethiopia. They are attempting to recapture the areas occupied by TDF, and also TDF is attempting to advance to further cities. So stallment, not that much pushing or gaining territory in both sides. So the cities captured by TDF is still under TDF control. Waldia, Sekota, Lalibela, uh, all other cities captured by TDF is still under Tigray Defense Force. But there is a push. There is an attempt, massive attempts on Ethiopian Defense Force side, Amara Special Forces, Afar, Oromo Special Militia, massive engagement, military engagement to recapture these areas. There is also one attempt reported in various media, Afar, in the Afar Tigray border area. There is an attempt to, to infiltrate into Mekele by some forces, special forces from a far side. But that attempt failed, and there are casualties, but we didn't see the number. TDF forces, uh, you know, uh, repelled these forces. The attempt to, infiltrate into Mekele and to engage or to capture Mekele, I think, by some special forces from Tigray Afar region or border area. That place is known as Ebela, something like that. So there is an attempt on that side. Except that the fighting is still bloody, the fighting is still heavy, the bloodshed is still heavy, still going on in this area. No sign of peace, no sign of stability. Terror, in big cities like Gondar. Restrictions on the citizens movement, is very tough, and other Amara cities too. So the situation is tense. We are still following almost for a month now. Not much movement in advancing and gaining some territories in both sides. Also in southern parts, OLA is recruiting and graduating new forces and conducting its massive operation to gain more ground uh, against the Prosperity Party. So the freedom movement is continuing, and we are watching it through different media, and we will report to you as soon as some breakthrough reported. Thank you, and let's start reading some news. Let's do it quickly. Thank you again for coming back. Conscription, forced contribution to army, and aid obstruction aggravate starvation in Borana, Oromia. Local administration blame enemy propaganda. So this report will tell you how the recruitment in Oromia is conducted, and despite the government media propaganda that everything seems voluntary, but when I read this, you will understand there is a coercion, there is a threat against citizens in Oromia, and forced residents to contribute their to contribute their wealth for this war. Eyewitness reports received by Addis Standard from residents in Borana zone, southern Oromia, reveal that civilians are suffering from severe food shortage, resulting in different have occurred as a result of starvation, particularly in Wachile Worada of the zone. Multiple residents of Wachile Worada who wanted to remain anonymous for fear of retribution from local authorities described similar stories. An eyewitness who is close to elderly victims who died of hunger told Addis Standard last week that two elderly men aged 75 to 80 and a 70-year-old woman have died due to starvation. A second eyewitness corroborated the story. A lot of people are dying from hunger, said. Although we are poor people who are dependent on aid, they told us we have to support the defense force and took everything from us forcefully. Now we are exposing to hunger. You see, everything is done by force, not voluntarily. Conscription, forced contribution to army, and crackdown on suspected Oromo Liberation Army supporters, residents. The local authorities conscripting youths who support their elderly parents, and this has led to hunger among the elderly. The second eyewitness explained. No one joined the army willingly. If we speak up, they will call us terrorists. And Shane, a term used by regional and federal government correspondent to refer to the Oromo Liberation Army, and throw us in jail, he said. This is eyewitness from the area. Okay? No one is joining the army willingly or voluntarily. A third resident also told Addis Standard that the zonal administration official took money and the cattle from residents to support the national defense forces from people who are already suffering from food insecurity. According to him, in addition to that, forced conscription of the youth has made the elderly vulnerable as they depend on the youth for farming and other activities. People who resisted have been arrested and many went missing, he said, adding, we wish for this act to stop. A civil servant in Wachile Worada corroborated residents' testimonies. It is true there is a hunger. Even an ordinary pastoral can be a witness to that, he said, and explained the predicament facing public servants who want to speak up, those who represent the people and are administrating the Worada are facing dilemma. If we don't speak, God will judge us. And if we speak, the government will persecute us. He also accused local authorities of blocking services in response to Oromo Liberation Army armed rebels' advances. The government blocked services amid intensifying operation by the Oromo Liberation Army in the area, which has aggravated the hunger, he said. If we speak up, they will accuse us of defaming the government and suspend us from work. At the same time, the local authorities order us to donate 1 month's salary to the National Defense Force and deducted it without our consent. We are in fear. Even if they ask, no one can refuse. Credit at this standard. So that is the situation. So the media propaganda about voluntary military contribution or cattle or other support for the military is forced on the residents and is causing hunger because most of the people depend on the use for farming and other support. So if you take away the use, if you take away the resources, limited resources they have, they will face hunger or possibly famine. Uh, you know, so that is the situation. That is the reality, and that's why we call on the this prime minister to give away for dialogue and reconciliation and to end this war because uh, the war is creating chaos, famine, death for all Ethiopians. For all Ethiopians. Last time I reported more than 400,000 people facing hunger in Oromia region, but that news is still is not coming, is hidden from the media. They didn't get help. Plus now war is going on and a forced contribution in military and natural resources is happening on the residents, especially in Oromia. So that's the situation. That is the reality. Nothing is voluntary. Nothing. Nobody is willing to contribute for this fight, for this ongoing war. A United Nations aid chief to Ethiopia, a famine in Tigray, get those trucks moving. United Nations aid chief Martin Griffin said on Tuesday he assumes famine has taken hold in Ethiopia's Tigray, where a nearly 3 months-long de facto blockade has restricted aid deliveries to 10% of what is needed in the war-torn region. Griffin told Reuters during an interview that his request was simple: get those trucks moving. This is man-made. This can be remedied by the act of government, he said. This is man-made. We predicted that there were 400,000 people in a famine-like condition at risk of famine, and the supposition was that if no aid got to them adequately, they would slip into famine, said Griffin, referring to a United Nations assessment in June. I have to assume that something like that is happening, he said, adding that it was difficult to know exactly what the situation was on the ground in Tigray because of a de facto aid blockade and the lack of fuel, cash, and trucks. Ethiopia's UN mission in New York said that any claim on the existence of blockade is baseless. It said aid groups faced shortage in trucks as a result of the non-return of almost all trucks that traveled to the Tigray to deliver aid. That's the Ethiopian government side claim. Truck drivers carrying aid into Tigray have been shot at least twice, and some Tigrayan drivers have been arrested in the neighboring region of Afar, although they were released. They were later released, according to the United Nations report. Malnutrition. Griffin said a lot of trucks go into Tigray and don't come back, compounding the humanitarian problem. He said no fuel trucks had gone into Tigray since late July. First of all, they probably do not have fuel to come out, he said. And secondly, they may not wish to. So the consequence for humanitarian operation, whatever the cause, is problematic. The United Nations in Ethiopia said on September 16 that only 38 out of 466 trucks that entered Tigray since July 12 had returned. On Tuesday, World Food Programme, the WFP in Ethiopia, posted on Twitter that 61 commercial trucks had left Tigray in recent days, and they expected more to depart in coming weeks. We will continue to work with transporters to overcome any logistical issues to ensure trucks are on the road, facilitating the delivery of humanitarian aid, WFP Ethiopia said. In Tigray, the United Nations says 5.2 million people, or 90% of the population, need help. According to the United Nations, screening of children under age 5 during the first half of September revealed that 22.7% are malnourished, and more than 70% of some 11,000 pregnant or breastfeeding women are actually malnourished. As a comparison, this is about the same level of malnutrition that we saw in 2011 in Somalia at the onset of the Somali famine, Griffin said. Griffin said 100 trucks a day of aid needed to get to Tigray, but only 10% had gained access in the past 3 months. We need the Ethiopian government to do what they promised to do, which is to facilitate access, said Griffin, who met with Ethiopia's Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen last week during the annual UN gathering of world leaders in New York. Mekonnen assured him that access is improving, but Griffin said it needs to improve a great deal more. Credit for this report, Reuters. So, humanitarian issue still tough. The blockade is still a concern, and Ethiopia government still they are not doing what they are supposed to, what they promised to do, opening up for aid trucks. That's only 10% is, aid trucks delivered in the last 3 months. Citing personal reasons, Filsan Abdullahi resigns as Minister of Women, Children and Youth Affairs. Before the formation of the new government, Filsan Abdullahi Ahmed resigned from her post as Minister of Women, Children and Youth Affairs, citing personal reasons. Filsan, who is a speech and language therapy consultant by training, became known for her stand on issues related to women's rights and Ethio-Somali rights. She is the founder of Nabad TV, the first private TV channel in Somali. Before being appointed as Minister of Women, Children and Youth Affairs, she was first appointed as Federal Goodwill Ambassador by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. She was appointed as minister on March 12, 2020, replacing Yalem Tsegaye. Amid pressure Amid pressures and criticism of the ministry's silence on sexual violence in Tigray, she confirmed that conclusive evidence was found that sexual violence occurred in the Tigray region. She said in a series of tweets posted on her official Twitter account in February 2021, "We have received the report back from our task force team on the ground in the Tigray region. They have unfortunately established rape has taken place conclusively and without a doubt." She promised to deliver justice and announced the establishment of task force, as the task force included a team from the Attorney General office, which are currently processing the data in terms of numbers. We wait the investigation of these horrible crimes and hopefully see when the perpetrators are brought to justice. However, in her resignation letter that was addressed to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and shared on social media, she highlighted the reasons behind her resignation and acknowledged challenges and failures due to financial and bureaucratic strains. She said, "Despite working through the pressure and strain of any job, I hope you will agree on the importance of the difference between when we should work through the challenge and when it is time to leave a position," adding, "Any situation that compromises my ethics is contrary to my conviction and values, and betraying these beliefs is a breach of trust to myself and our citizens." Filsan concluded her letter by offering her resignation effective immediately, she said, "for reasons of personal nature that weigh heavily on my conscience. I regretfully submit my letter of resignation effective immediately." Credit Addis Standard. So we have to applaud her, uh, Minister Filsan Abdullahi, for taking this bold step. I hope the others will follow. If they are facing something contrary to their values and the commitment they made for themselves and for the residents they are serving. So she is the first I know resigned from the ministerial post, citing for now is so many issues, but for personal reasons, plus some contradictory to her values. So we should applaud her. We should encourage others to do so, and instead of keep lying to Ethiopians, keep lying to the global communities of what is happening in that country, and working under the pressure of prime minister as a dictator, working under a dictator. They should challenge him. Other one, if you don't challenge him, he will be like Isaiah after a while. If he got the opportunity to defeat TDF and to defeat OLA and other liberation movement, he will be the worst dictator in Africa. I compared him with Idi Amin, maybe worse than Idi Amin. But he is, for now, he looks like try to be Isaias Afwerki. He's learning from him, closing all the freedom fighters and challenging the democratic values, shutting down opposition figures, and firing and hiring whatever he wants. So we should appreciate this lady for taking this bold step, and others should follow. others should challenge this prime minister when they are lying, instead of sticking to as a cabinet position and keep lying themselves and keep lying to Ethiopians and the global community. So, thank you, Minister Filsan Abdullahi. Filsan Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for taking this bold step. Okay. The other thing is Addis Ababa is also formed. It is a new government. It's nothing new. So let's read quickly. Addis Ababa city new administration formed. Adanech elected mayor. On Tuesday, Addis Ababa city new administration was formed. Adanech Abiy, who was acting mayor during the previous city administration, is sworn as a mayor. She will be leading the administration for the next 5 years. She pledged to undertake work that consider and honor the city's greatness. Addis Ababa is the seat of the African Union and many other international organizations. She also unveiled city cabinets and the key members of her administration. The cabinet has 46 executive members and 25 cabinet members, including the mayor. When she was appointed as acting mayor by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Adanech Abiy faced legitimacy issues as her appointment appeared to have radical ethnic Oromo political machination within the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed party. There was also an exclusive ownership over Addis Ababa from the same political group, which gave rise to a movement which turned out to be an opposition political party, Balderas for the True Democracy. Key leaders of the party, including Eskender Nagga, were thrown in prison with as many believed to be trumped up charges. Adanech's term in office were not as turbulent as it was expected to be, or it didn't surface, at least as she apparently seems to have understood the concerns of residents in the city. Added to that, she didn't demonstrate some sentiments of the radical ethnic Oromo nationalist tones. She rather appeared to have embraced an Ethiopian nationalist tone, and that seems to have contributed to her election as mayor. It remains to be seen if she continues to live the course and be a voice for Ethiopianism. That's the problem now we are facing. A value that has been demonstrated by radical ethnic nationalists, including Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, which the Ethiopian parliament designated as terrorist group from different parts of the country. So nothing new in this new government formation, but she added a couple of people. One is Girma Seifu from Izema, and also Yusuf Ibrahim from Amara National Movement for Amara Party. Plus, according to some media news outlets, Dr. Kania Yadata, Dr. Kania Yadata, defense minister, Ethiopia defense minister, will be demoted to lead Addis Ababa Peace and Security Office. So from defense minister, he will be going to serve under Adanech Abiy cabinet as the security and peace head of the office. So that's a demotion. And instead of throwing out, they just put him in a different position. So nothing new, except those three guys joining the new cabinet. And these two guys, Seifu Girma and Yusuf Ibrahim, controversial individuals, especially when it comes to the causes of Oromo, including insulting Oromos. And Adanech Abiy or Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed don't care about these issues, even calling Oromos to go back to Madagascar and some other controversial tweets from, especially from Seifu Girma Seifu or what? Girma Seifu. Okay. Eritrea accused EU, US of supporting TPLF rebels. Eritrea Foreign Minister Osman Salah on Monday blamed Ethiopia's Tigray People Liberation Front (TPLF) rebels for provoking a major war in Tigray. The comment came from Salah during a pre-recorded message to the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Salah also accused the United States and its European allies of defending the TPLF illicit and dangerous acts of insurrection and mayhem and marshal all the tools at their disposal to rehabilitate it at any cost. In May, the United States sanctioned Eritrea defense chief over the army's role in the Tigray conflict. Ethiopia has accused the United States of meddling in its internal affairs after Washington announced restriction on economic and security assistance over Tigray. In September, US President Joe Biden threatened new sanctions targeting individuals he said were preventing a ceasefire and obstructing the delivery of humanitarian aid in war-torn areas. In late June, the rebels rejected a government-declared ceasefire, launching attacks on the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions, where they have been accused of committing massacres. They have since vowed to topple Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government. The United Nations Human Rights Office says all sides have committed abuses. The war has triggered a hunger crisis and threatened stability in Africa's second most populous country, reported by African News, citing Associated Press. So there was no ceasefire. There was no unilateral ceasefire declared by Ethiopian government. We talked about this. This is a false claim. They were defeated. They were forced out of Tigray. No ceasefire. Nothing about thinking of Tigrayan farmers to help Tigrayan farmers. That's all fake. They were defeated by force. They were refused thanks to the Tigrayan people, courageous dedication to fight against this occupying force under the pretext of law and order operation. So they got defeated, but they keep claiming that they have declared ceasefire. No, that's false. A new jihadist group claim it killed Sudan spies. This is news is shared by Will Ross, Africa editor, BBC World Service. A previously unknown jihadist group has said it killed 6 Sudanese intelligence officers during a shootout on Tuesday. The government had blamed the attack on militants from the Islamic State (IS) group, but a jihadist group calling itself the Movement for Preaching and Combat said it had killed the Sudanese officers and denied any link with IS. It has not been possible to independently verify the claim, The authorities admitted losing 5 officers in Tuesday's raid and said 11 militants were arrested. Last week, the Sudanese military said it foiled a coup attempt. It further strained relations between the civilian and the military wings of the country's ruling transitional authority. So I don't know which this new Islamic group uh, attacking the Sudanese officers and killing 6. Okay, United States announced 37 million contribution to Education Cannot Wait Fund. On September 27, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Administrator Samantha Power announced 37 million in new contribution to the Education Cannot Wait ECW Global Fund at its biannual high-level steering group. This contribution will support education cannot wait in ensuring that children and the youth in countries experiencing emergencies and protracted crises have access to life-saving and life-sustaining education service, in particular as countries respond and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Education in humanitarian context can provide life-saving space, access to information and other services, a foundation for lifelong learning, and hope for the future. The United States has long supported education, particularly in the context of crisis and conflict, and we have been a proud supporter, advocate, and contributor to Education Cannot Wait since its inception in 2016. This contribution of 37 million is our largest contribution to date, bringing our total support since fiscal year 2017 to more than 77 million, including 39 million through the Department of State's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, and 38 million through USAID. We commend Education Cannot Wait on its progress, achievement, and work bringing quality education to children who need it the most, and responding to the call to address widening education inequalities that is driven by increased number, duration, and intensity of crises around the globe. We look forward to continue our work with ECW, Education Cannot Wait, to deliver results, build humanitarian and development coherence, improve learning outcomes, and reach those in the most vulnerable situations, especially girls, gender and sexual minorities, and the children with disabilities, so that all children can experience the transformative effects of education and reach their full potential. So credit U.S. State Department. This is good. Funding for education we should appreciate, especially for children, for disability, and for other impacted community. So we applaud the United States for its contribution. Okay, British Army to start driving tankers. Fuel costs persist. Week of shortage, despite Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying the situation is improving. Britain has been gripped by a rush of panic buying that has left pumps dry across major cities after oil companies warned they didn't have enough tanker drivers to move petrol and diesel from refineries to filling stations. Opponents blame the crisis on government incompetence, and it is an yielding approach to Brexit, which has blocked haulers from hiring drivers from the EU since Britain abandoned the common market this year. London says the disruption is partly an unforeseen result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Business Minister Kwasi Kwarteng said 150 soldiers would be driving tankers within a few days, and the civilians would start shipment later on Wednesday using a government reserve fleet of around 80 vehicles. The last few days have been difficult. We have seen large coup, but I think the situation is stabilizing. We are getting petrol into the forecast. I think we are going to see our way through this, Kwarting said. Johnson has sought to quell concern, saying supplies were returning to normal while also urging people not to panic buy. A shortage of around 100,000 drivers has sown chaos through supply chains and raised the specter of empty shelves and the price increase at Christmas. Credit for this, BBC News. And further, if you want to read more further details about this situation, you can go bbc.com and read more. So that is, using soldiers to transport fuel to gas stations and other areas. Okay, the last part for today's reading. North Korea says it fired new hypersonic missile. North Korea has claimed that it successfully tested a new hypersonic missile called Hwasong-8 on Tuesday. State media said the new missile was one of the 5 most important new weapon systems laid out in its 5-year military development plan. They called the missile a strategic weapon, which usually means it has nuclear capabilities. Tuesday's launch is another indication of Pyongyang's growing weapons technology amid strict sanctions. The development of this weapons system has increased the nation's capability for self-defense in every way, North Korean state news outlet KCNA said. Tuesday's launch also saw North Korea introduce missile fuel ampoule for the first time, described by the North Korean analyst Ankit Panda as a significant milestone. This is a technology that allows missiles to be pre-fueled and then sent to the field in canisters. This means it could potentially stay launch ready for years. The latest launch also marked the country's 3rd missile test this month. It has already revealed a new type of cruise missile as well as a new train-launched ballistic missile system. Yesterday's launch came as its North Korean envoy Kim Song defended the country's right to develop weapons at the annual UN General Assembly in New York. Mr. Kim said the country was building up our national defense in order to defend ourselves and reliably safeguard the security and the peace of the country. Credit BBC. So we have to follow what is happening in North Korea seriously, and the rise of China, the rise of North Korea, and the issue with Russia. These are the challenges the globe, especially the United States, must deal with it. And this is, hypersonic, very fast, launching capacity missile. It's a very threatening weapon. And they have to, I don't know how to deal with North Korea. Trump tried and met with the North Korean leader. Biden so far, he didn't meet with this guy. And we don't know how they're going to handle this very powerful, very small, very powerful, economically very low. People are, suffering, starving, but the country is very powerful with nuclear weapon. And now with this hypersonic missile, very, very speedy, So Russia also tested this weapon before. Now North Korea and China also. So these are the challenge, the global challenges, instead of the challenges we have in Africa, hunger and other civil conflict. Thank you for staying with me with these reading materials. I have very short some videos, then I will conclude today's presentation. Thank you again. There we go. There we go. Let's listen.
Bonjour. I speak on behalf of Ireland and Mexico, co-chairs of the Security Council Informal Expert Group on Women, Peace and Security. As President of the Security Council, Ireland called this meeting following the Deputy Secretary General's visit recently to Somalia, and that visit focused on the participation of women in the country's upcoming elections and in political life. Today's meeting on Somalia is part of our efforts to bridge the gap between the Security Council's deliberations in New York here and the reality on the ground for women in countries that are on the Council's agenda. The world over, there's a direct link between the political participation of women and stability, peace and prosperity. We are convinced that the members of the Security Council must support this vision. In Somalia, as determined by the Somali people themselves, advancing women's participation in politics and in every aspect of public life is imperative for the future of the country. Women's participation is a right, not a request. As we'll hear at the meeting, the upcoming national elections represent an opportunity to build on the progress made in women's political participation in Somalia. We will hear from Shukriya Dini, a Somali woman leader who is striving to ensure that the 30% quota of women's representation in Parliament is met. And at its last parliamentary election, we know that Somalia made significant strides in the representation of women in Parliament, achieving 24% of the seats. We just need to build on that. In June, Mexico and Ireland hosted a meeting of the Informal Expert Group on Women, Peace and Security to consider Somalia for the very first time. After that meeting, I, along with my Mexican and UK counterparts, wrote to the country's leadership in Somalia, supporting the Somali people's determination to ensure women's participation in the elections and urging them to fulfil the implementation of the 30% quota. What's urgent now is to identify concrete ways to translate commitments into practice and tangible actions. It's crucial that the elections proceed without further delay. The people of Somalia need to have their voices heard. We also need immediate action to prevent, address, and end impunity for the shocking levels of sexual and gender-based violence being suffered by Somali women and girls. Ensuring that women candidates can participate safely in politics without fear of violence or of intimidation will be key to making progress. Thank you.
Many countries, what you just said should apply to a lot of countries, not only to Somalia. Like in my own country, we don't have a lot of women in charge. So what can we do against that?
Absolutely. I believe 50% of the world's population deserve and need 50% of the world's participation and representation. But the best is not the enemy of the good. And we absolutely see a real life situation here where we believe, as co-chairs of the informal expert group, that frankly, women's participation or lack thereof is linked to instability. We have seen that globally, that where women are fully participating, that the risks and the fragility is lessened. Women, in other words, increase your chances of sustainable peace. So now we're at an inflection point in Somalia, where we know we've seen real challenges on the ground. We've seen horrendous violence. We saw the death of a young woman, gender activist, in a horrific incident just last week. So we want to now speak up on behalf of those Somali women whose voices aren't always heard. The Deputy Secretary General had a very good visit there. We will hear from a young Somali woman today. So we're not saying it's the only place that assistance is needed, but it certainly is needed in Somalia.
Ambassador, I know you're talking about Somalia today, but can I ask you about one of the other news stories of the day, which concerns Afghanistan, where, as you know, women are still, or girls still not going to school, and now the Chancellor of Kabul University, the top higher education institution in the country, the Taliban-appointed Chancellor, is saying indefinitely no women to Kabul University. What's your reaction to that?
Well, frankly, I think it's a shocking statement. We have said from the beginning we will judge the Taliban not by their words, by their actions. We've called for the Taliban to be inclusive. Excluding women, excluding 50% of the population of Afghanistan is not inclusive. We will continue to speak out for the women of Afghanistan. We believe they have an absolutely every right. I just said at the podium in relation to Somali women, this is a right, not a request. It's a fundamental human right to have equal access to healthcare, education, and to be free of violence and intimidation. The young women of Afghanistan have lived 20 years in an environment where their hopes have been realised for full, inclusive participation in their society, and we'll continue to speak out for them in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, that's United Nations statement on Somalia and Afghanistan.
I still think I can sell the card myself. This is going to take all day. And I have big.
Okay, this is China.
China's force in the air and its advanced technology.
I think everyone cares most about H-20 bomber, but it's not here. Maybe we'll have to wait for a few more years. Other than that, it's the J-20 fighter.
J-10 and J-20 stealth fighters are among the highlights at this air show in Zhuhai City. It's part of Beijing's drive to compete against Western rivals in selling its latest military hardware and technology.
The main feature of the FK-2000 air defense weapon system is that it's a combat vehicle integrated with an air defense system. It has 2 sets of radar, a photoelectric sensor, 6 missiles on each side, and 2 anti-aircraft guns.
It's a show the US is likely to keep a close eye on. It signed a security pact with the UK and Australia that includes providing nuclear-powered submarines to Canberra as a deterrent against what they see as Chinese threats in the Indo-Pacific region. Last week, leaders of Japan, Australia and India met US President Joe Biden in the White House. The so-called Quad is seen as a counterweight to China's growing influence and says it's committed to what it calls a free and open Indo-Pacific region. China has also bought military outposts on artificial islands in the South China Sea in an effort to reclaim territory that's also claimed by other countries in the region. Back in Zhuhai, China shows off its prototype of the advanced CH-6 drone.
Unmanned aerial vehicles used in reconnaissance roles and in combat missions. I think that's where the trend is really heading towards for China in mimicking the trends set by the United States as a leading military power in the world. We've seen over the last 2 decades a shift towards a lot of autonomous, unmanned, highly intelligent military platforms on land and in the sea and in the air.
Industry experts say, although many of China's aircraft aren't yet a match for those in the US Air Force, Beijing's clearly out to narrow that gap. Laura Manley, Al Jazeera.
So we are here today on the south side of Chicago in Jackson Park to officially break ground on the Obama Presidential Center. For we are living through a moment of rapid disruption in technology, in the global economy, in our social arrangements, in our environment. And those disruptions can be scary. And too often it feels as if our major institutions have failed to respond effectively to these disruptions, to help people find economic security or manage our differences or protect our planet. And what we've seen is that in the breach, a culture of cynicism and mistrust can grow. You start seeing more division and increasingly bitter conflict. The politics that feeds anger and resentment towards those who aren't like us and starts turning away from democratic principles in favor of tribalism and might makes right. This is true in Europe and in Asia. It's true in Latin America and in Africa. And it happens to be true here at home. But the good news is we can reverse these trends. I don't believe it's inevitable that we succumb to paralysis or mutual hatred or abandon democracy in favor of systems that reserve power and privilege for the few. As has been true throughout our history, I believe we have it in us to reimagine our institutions, to make them responsive to today's challenges, and to rebuild our societies in a way that gives more and more people a better life. And through this center, we intend to give these young people and those who are coming up behind them whatever training, support, resources, and platforms they need to fully realize their potential, to collaborate and share ideas, and to bring their dreams to scale. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go grab some shovels and break some ground.
So the Obama, former president, breaking the ground for his library, presidential library in Chicago.
Are we ready? These are outstanding ceremonial shovels. Are you guys ready? Let's step forward. All right, first one is going to be just sticking it in the ground. Ready? Go. All right, look up. Smile. Very good one. All right, now we're going to lift up the dirt. Yeah. That's a nice dirt, by the way. All right. And now I guess we're going to toss the dirt out. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Hey.
Okay. So that's all the update I have for you for September 29, 2021. Thank you for joining the Concerned Citizens Media. I would repeat my appreciation for Minister Filsan Abdullahi Ahmed for her resignation by citing some conflicting issues with her values conscious, and that's encouraging for others to do so, to challenge Prime Minister uh, in the next 5 years. That's their dream, but I hope they will not stay that much. I hope change of government will happen before that, because if we allow them to continue to enjoy their 5 years, we are allowing them to continue human rights violations, carelessness about law of, law in the country, lawlessness in Ethiopia, lack of accountability. We are allowing them to continue famine, hunger, command post, and the continuation of bloodshed in that country, and inflation, and global isolation, closing of embassies all over the world. It never happened in Ethiopian history. So we are allowing these all things to happen if we allow Prosperity Party to continue for the next 5 years. So we have to do whatever we can to support freedom fighters, and we have to do our part in social media, coming out to joining protests against Prosperity Party at home and around the world, and especially the Oromos are silenced for several months now. I don't know what they get. The fundraising is good, but the campaigning, the protest is quiet for some time. So they have to get ready to do the campaign against PP, expose what the PP are doing against Oromos and the others. And those protesters in Oromia, in Europe, Australia, Canada, in the United States, and African countries, they have to join their force against Prosperity Party, who are killing the country, simply. They are killing. There's no prosperity in Ethiopia. Unemployment is high, inflation is high, and isolation, global isolation is clear, and sanctions. And they have no idea how to come out of sanctions. They are willing to continue the bloodshed, bloodbath in Ethiopia. So we have to re-energize, refresh our energies, and start again, protest again, continue our social campaign, and contribute in raising the fund, twice, 3 times, 4 times, or whatever we can to expedite the freedom in that country, to end the atrocities in that country, and to create the atmosphere for our Oromo political prisoners and the others to be released, and to allow Mr. David Ibsa, OLF chairman, to be free from house arrest or whatever it is. We don't know what's happening concerning that guy and other OLF officials, and the global community is silent. What is happening in Oromia? Nobody is demanding for the rule of law in Oromia especially. So Abiy Ahmed is getting his way and doing whatever he can to subdue and degrade our political leaders, keep them in jail as much as he wants without any due process. So we are allowing it, and so the armed struggle is encouraging, but the financial or fundraising is encouraging around the globe. But what's missing is activism and social media activism and protesting. We should come out. We should come out and continue our job. Thank you, everyone, and be safe. I will be back with other news and comment from Concerned Citizens Media. So long, everyone.